All right, guys, this is Peak Performance 40 podcast. Today I've got a friend, Nathan Baxter, who happens to be fairly extraordinary for a number of reasons. Nathan, why don't you introduce yourself rather than me make a mess of everything you've actually accomplished? So tell us what it is about you and strength that makes you worth talking.
If you ask some people, absolutely nothing, not worth talking to me at all. Um, but what I did, I'm the first. I wasn't the first, unfortunately. I was the second drug-free guy in Australia bench press 300 kilos. Still the only person to go over 700. I think I've got more 700 plus benches than anybody in the Commonwealth still. And definitely by any Australian, drug free or otherwise. So that's the number one. So I'm pretty good at powerlifting. And then I think that the strength stuff
I'm the best in the country, but I'm okay.
I got over 5 strokes. So I think in terms of understanding strength and learning strength, I learned more from coming back from the strokes and getting over heart failure than probably I really did from powerlifting or any of the other athletes I coached over the years.
I think that's a really interesting thing. You know, the recovery from where you were led to a discovery on your part. So what did you do when you got the 5 strokes? Because I think this is actually the most incredible part is you didn't sit around and mope. What did you go off and study?
Oh no, I went and did. So I did mope for the probably for the first 12 months. I was trying to work out what to do, and I was rehabbing myself. And someone said, "Oh, you should go back and study. Then I'll give you something to do." So I did a neuroscience degree. Basically, I think in the spirit of the typical Australian middle aged guy of going, "You guys aren't helping. Screw you. I'll do it myself."
And
So yeah, I
I
did a
have
neuroscience degree to work out what to do for
the,
myself.
the, the research on neuroscience versus because I know your background. In fact, I first started hearing of you through Z Health. So
Mm.
I haven't done Z Health, but I know it's got a lot of neuro components to it. And I know you're a master trainer for them. And I remember speaking to, I think, Katie Bigelow, one of the other Z Health
Oh
master
yeah.
instructors back in the day. And she actually stopped doing her PhD in neuro because she said it's so far behind what I'm doing with Z Health, I can't justify spending the money on it any further. So, what was your experience with going back and studying it when you already had a pretty decent understanding of it through stuff you'd done a decade ago?
Yeah, for me, it was doing the degree was almost working out where I was right and where I had gaps. I feel bad for Katie cutting that PhD because it must have been a rubbish PhD then if she was jumping out thinking Z Health was
Probably the
better.
same university that Mike Israel went to.
Oh, was it?
No, I'm just joking, but I mean, you know, I think the US has probably got a much bigger discrepancy between standards of university, perhaps, than we do. We've got much fewer
Oh yeah, for
educational
sure,
institutions here. Yeah,
for sure. So I found studying, doing the neuroscience degree was incredibly helpful because it gave me mechanisms, like neural proper cellular mechanisms for a lot of the stuff that we'll talk about in C Health. It also showed me where we are getting variable results using Z Health. Was able to figure out why we're getting variable results and going uh, and addressing the errors in some of our teaching where we go, oh, this is what's happening, so we should get this result, and then only to find out with more updated research that that wasn't what was happening or something else, which was getting the results some of the time. So therefore, we could be a bit more specific with what we're doing, sort of edit the exercise catalog a bit to stick with just what was working.
yeah. And tell me, because I think I know the story, but it's such an interesting story for me. Tell everyone about the heart attack day. I think that's a just in general for this age group, you know, like a lot of guys will feel like, oh, you know, I don't want to be a sissy, or I don't want to be a hypochondriac,
Mm.
and you know, well, the doctor said this, and so you know, I must just be imagining things. Can you tell everyone the story? Because I think it's really important that people understand, like you said, you got to know where you're right and where you're wrong. You got to manage the situation yourself because
Yes.
the doctor's never going to care about it as much as you do. And your story is such a great example of that.
Yeah. So what led up to the strokes was heart failure, and what led up to the heart failure was atrial fibrillation or training in atrial fibrillation for so long, but it went undetected for lots and lots of years. A few years back, when I was going through some of the, looking at doing some legal stuff, I got all the GP visits that I did during that time, and I would go to a GP and say, "Hey, my chest feels weird, and my left shoulder is just always kind of naggingly sore." And you say that now, and everyone goes, "Yeah, that's hard." But I would
Yeah,
go
yeah.
and and
And
say,
look at your
"Listen,
age. Yeah.
I said, this is what's going on," and they go, "Oh, yeah, it's probably this." I go, "Are you sure it's not my heart?" And they go, "No, no, no, it'll be from what you're doing." So, as
It's
soon
because
as
you
the
just
doctor
bench,
hears, they go, "Oh, you're 180 kilos and you bench press 400 kilos. That's what's going on." And I'm going, "Yeah, I'm not sure about that." So I went from doctor to doctor to doctor, got so many different opinions. Most GPs would diagnose me in whatever their pet area was. So, like um, the testosterone guy, guess what? He told me I had a
right? Flow
testosterone
test for
deficiency.
sure. Yeah.
Um, there was a guy that tried to get me on thyroid stuff. Remember, thyroid was everything about 10 years ago. Like, if you had anything wrong, it's your thyroid. So he
I
tried,
just as an
yeah,
aside, I was on there's a personal training forum on Reddit, and I stupidly went to it, and this person saying, "Oh, well, I've got this guy, and he's not losing weight, and he's like 125 kilo, and he's allegedly on 1,600 calories a day, and they're saying he's not losing weight." I'm like, look, there's a fair chance he's not recording accurately what he's saying he's eating and what he's eating are two different things. And someone went, "Oh, look, it's a thyroid condition." I'm like, it is possible, but
maybe, but you
but
can't diagnose it on the internet.
the stats say that it's 1 to 2 people out of every 100, right? So it's a
Mm,
1% chance. And that for women, it's 10 times more likely. So actually, it's a guy, right? So this is a 0.1% chance that it's thyroid. That leaves me 99.9% more likely that it's just that he's misrecording what he's eating. And this person's like, no, 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 it's definitely thyroid.
yeah, let me guess. Somebody suggested that he get desiccated pig thyroid from
Oh, no,
research labs
I
in
had to stop
Thailand,
responding.
and
I had to stop responding. I couldn't deal with it anymore.
I think you're awesome for maintaining a presence in those forums, because I can't do it. I get so mad
It's
after.
I don't I can reply to like two things, and I look, and you've been around for a long time. The general quality for good, sensible training advice is it's very low, right? There's not much around there, and so you try to help out, but there's just so many idiots out there, and it's overwhelming so often. Anyway, enough about Reddit.
Anyway,
Let's
so
get
yeah,
back to the heart attack story.
so we had the testosterone guy, the thyroid guy, end up getting 3 mental health diagnoses leading
Oh,
into
panic attacks, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it. So I was struggling to breathe a lot for a long time, and I remember flying to Copenhagen one in 2014, like almost a year and a half before the strokes, and I would blow up like really really badly on the flights, and I'd tell doctors that's not normal for me. They go, no, no, people blow up, people get like that. It's all right, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's not normal for me. My benchmark for everything isn't some normal distribution of the population. It's based on me. So I kept on pushing. And so the breathlessness was a big indication that I was already in heart failure, a long way out. So um, being breathless, I thought, given what the doctors were saying, I'm just a fat guy. I need to do more cardio. I already did a lot of cardio. My conditioning was great, so I was able to do a
Well,
lot
and
more.
he came from a rugby background, so it's not
Mm,
like you're
yeah,
unfit. Yeah.
yeah. I was rugby and cross country mountain biking before I did powerlifting. Um, so my conditioning was great. So I thought, oh well, I'll just do more conditioning because I enjoyed that. I was running 5K 3 times a week at a body weight of 180 in heart failure. Yeah, right. So when people go, how did you do that? I go, I'm really good at pushing myself. Like I knew how to push through that. It would be horrible. But that was one of the big lessons I learned through getting strong, is that a lot of the time it's a lot of mental stuff. You need to learn how to push through when everything else is telling you not to. But at that point in time, I should have stopped. I shouldn't have pushed through. It would have changed a lot of stuff. So in the end, all that running, all the cardio stuff, even more than the strength work, accelerated heart failure, pushed me deeper and deeper and deeper. Got down to a 10% ejection fraction. So blood
Just
would
for
actually.
people who don't know, normal's about 70. So to be
Yep.
at 10%, you're going to feel like you're breathing through a straw most of the time.
yeah, had a super high, like a resting heart rate of like 140 or something nuts. Um, I know on admission to hospital it was like 170, 175 at rest. Couldn't
At
breathe,
rest.
couldn't draw breath. And that night I'd wake up unable to breathe because I was having central apneas. In the time that I was waiting to get in to see the respiratory specialist, but those specialists, it's a long wait time. And
Mm.
so I was waiting to get this appointment. Go, why am I waking up like this? Why am I out of breath all the time? Eventually, in the middle of the night, 5 clots left my heart at the same time because it was pumping so low that blood would clot. The blood
Yeah.
clotted inside my heart, and so 5 clots come out, and they all lodged in different parts of my brain. Woke up, sounded drunk. It sounded just like I'd been on a 3-day bender, and I looked at my wife and I said, and said to her, I think this is different this time, but I slurred it like really badly, that kind of stuff. And according to my wife, my one side of my face just melted like a
Yeah.
candle, and she did all of the fast test, which is all the signs. And so she goes, lift your arms up, and I lifted both arms up, and I think I'm doing this, but really I'm doing one arm and the other arm isn't moving. But in my head, my whole body's moving. And she said, no, your left side of your body did nothing.
Yeah.
She called an ambulance. Ambulance got me to the hospital within 20 minutes and had the clot busting drugs. After a little while, had the clot busting drugs, and then we went from there. But in that, so I had minimal damage. I had some permanent damage, but minimal.
So, how long were the AF symptoms going on for before this happened? It was a period of years.
Yeah, it was since I was about 16.
Oh,
We
wow.
yeah. So once I figured out what AF felt like afterwards, I go, oh, that's happened all my life. And
That's
so
crazy.
one of the maneuvers, they call it a vagal maneuver, where you just go and kind of bear down hard to make your heart feel better again. I used to do that all the time.
Huh.
And my friends and family members go, oh man, we remember when you were 18, you used to do that. But I remember going to see a doctor when I was about 16 or 17. And I said, every now and then my heart is just really funny and it just feels weird and I don't know what's going on.
And you got one of those, oh, it's growing pains kind of explanations?
Pretty
Yeah.
much. Yep.
It's funny, like I have FAI. I've smashed my labrum in one hip at least to pieces. I say at least because I've not had the other one scanned. But I found that out at 40. And the guy who did the scan goes, oh, you probably shouldn't squat deep or kick high or anything like that. I'm like, well, it's a good thing I wasn't on the Taekwondo team for Australia when I was
Yeah.
17. And like you, I mean, I can look back as a teenager and I can see times where I would be lying on the floor crying as a kid, like 14,
Mhm.
15 years old. Mind you, I'm a black belt in a martial art at this point. I'm fighting adults. I'm in line for Olympic selection. Like, I'm pretty tough for a 15, 16-year-old kid. And I'm in tears because my hip hurts so badly. And the doctors go, oh, it's just growing pains. You'll be right. And
Oh, wow. Yeah.
it took 23 years to find out actually I was causing permanent damage to my hips because I'm constantly kicking super high and fast
Mhm.
all the time, jamming into end range. So, I mean, that hindsight thing, when you look back at it, I wonder how many other guys in our age group have similarly had damaging stuff happen in the past that's been brushed off by doctors when they were younger.
Oh, I'm sure a lot. Like I know um, both my joint replacements that I've had so 12 months ago I had this shoulder replaced. A few years ago I had my right hip replaced. Both of those surgeries are a result of doctors going, you'll be fine. It's not too bad. Because I would go in and they go, what's the pain? Gives on a scale of 1 to 10, how's the pain? I go, it's a 1.
Well, because you're living in heart failure all the time. I mean,
Right?
your idea of what normal pain is already off the chart for most
It's
people.
really, really skewed. So for both joints, I'd always go, yeah, it's a 1 or 2. It's all right. I remember I would just move my hip around and I hear it click, 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 click. It turned out that I was chipping bone, like we're
Oh,
getting osteocytes on the pelvis side, and they were growing out. And every time I moved my hip, it would just chip off little
grinded
bits,
away again. Yeah, awesome.
grind away bits of bone back into the joint. So
Let,
uh,
let's
I,
let's
like
let's segue from
I did
this.
1,000 pound yoke on that. I squatted 400 kilos on that. I did that for years and just managed to push through.
it does show you though the role of genetics. I mean, if I tried to lift 1,000 pounds, I'd crumple like a tin can. You are doing it one-legged
Yeah,
and
right.
still able to deal with it. It just shows you like you're either built for it or you're not.
Man, we had that. That's funny. My friend Ben Wright, who's Australia's best Paralympic bencher, we were having this conversation the other day about weight classes, and because I'm really against manipulating body weight to change weight classes to get a small advantage. I think it's stupid.
Well, let's be honest, especially middle-aged guys bulking, which is one of my pet peeves. Yeah.
Just don't do it. Like I've lost what 60 kilos since I stopped powerlifting. It's really hard work to get that weight off, and for every 5 years you wait to take that weight off, it gets exponentially harder.
Yeah. Let's
So,
segue to more a training talk rather than a bashing ourselves to pieces talk. I mean, the basic things with training, I always feel like it comes down to really it's two, it's volume or intensity. I mean, density can play a part, but I feel like density is probably not such a common training practice as volume and intensity. So if you had to, I don't know, talk about one being more important than the other or the role of both in training, what's your take on volume versus intensity?
volume. It's always volume.
And
There's not even a discussion there. It's volume.
because we're talking volume, and I think this is another thing people misunderstand is average intensity. I feel like a lot of people try to do high volume and high intensity, which is possible for a short period of time. But if you're talking
You can get away with it.
over a 10-year period to really build some genuine strength, what's your average intensity looking like?
Yeah, like if you want to get there fast, I know we talk about that between 70 and 73%. I've never seen a regression that's come out with anything that's not in the low 70s for average intensity.
So that's old school Russian right there.
Yeah, like they figured it out in the 60s. No one's really been able to dispel it or come up with anything better. So, and I think that's the top average intensity.
Mm.
I've played around with some older clients of working on 50% average intensity, and go and saying, well, do you want to be strong this year, next year, in 5 years? And they go, I'm happy with 5 years. So we sit them on about 50%, and they get stronger, man. And we just over time though we push the volume up. And it's
Sure.
all about the volume, and their top weights go up. We don't need as much intensity as what people have talked about, especially through that 80s and 90s bodybuilding phase. I think that's where
Well,
I think
I
that's
think
where the intensity talk comes from.
but that's a misunderstanding of the word intensity to me.
Yep.
And CrossFit
Oh,
has it. They'll call a Fran workout an intense workout. I'm like, it goes for 4 to 5 minutes for people, or 10 minutes, or whatever. It's the opposite of intensity.
mm,
Like intensity is one rep.
yep.
If we're using the real definition, and I think that high intensity training, the Mike Mensa thing. I mean, if you're going to failure, that's not actual high intensity.
No. That's just I trained like that for a few years. It was really fun, but it was really sub maximal weights, and it probably works out to about 70% again.
And I have to ask, excuse me, from a powerlifting perspective, when you were training that way, I'm going to guess that your max loads tanked, right?
Oh, I was doing bodybuilding at the time. I
Right.
was I was just wanting to get really big, strong muscles, and that was my entry into powerlifting anyway. I just wanted to be the biggest and strongest I could be because, man, I grew up watching Lou Ferrigno on the Incredible Hulk, and
Yeah.
I watched Pumping Iron. All my favorite cartoons were the big guys, like
Sure.
the Incredible
He-Man,
Four
absolutely. Yeah.
or Hulk or He Man. I'm like, that's what I want to be like. I want to be like those guys. So
So, I mean, that's an interesting thing. So, I mean, Arnold and Lou, high volume. So,
mm,
what drew you to the high intensity side? Is it what seems to be the logic behind it? Because you're quite an
yeah,
intelligent guy. So, I feel like the logic appealed to you.
it was the logic, and it was I think Mike Mensa is a real. He was very eloquent and presented himself
Originally,
pseudo intellectually, right, for a long time, and he sounded smart until you know. Well, we know
towards
how
the
it.
end, not so much.
And then Dorian Yates was really championing it, and I was a massive Yates fan because he was just the biggest, ugliest, freakiest guy around, and so like, well, if that's how the champ trains, that's what I should do.
Or
Um,
even when I look at, You're talking about the Russian sort of 70% average intensity thing as being like the benchmark. If you look at successful training programs, the original DeLorme 3x10 with a set at 50%, a set at 75%, and then a set at 100% 10 RM to failure is still just about unmatched from a results point of view. And if I look at
Yeah.
Yates, I'm actually going to say he was more of a DeLorme trainee than a HIT trainee because he had warm up sets.
Yes.
His rep range for the final exercise might have been a little bit shorter, more like sort of 6 to 8. But
Hmm.
I, and when I've read stuff, showing my age, going back to guys like Skip LaCour, and
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
but guys like that who were, I'm going to say, quasi natural, saying that most bodybuilders will find their best gains are in the 6 to 8 range because of both size and strength.
Hmm.
Um, so I think some of the stuff that people come up with now, like I don't know if you've seen the research that's come out from like Brad Schoenfeld and guys like that over the last 2 years or so, saying, hey, it should be really high volume, and it delivers results that are so infinitesimally small for muscle gain that you and I
Mm.
could measure it anyway.
Yep.
And let's be honest, who's doing 50 sets of body part anyhow? It'd crush you in a week.
Wow. 50 sets. I remember
Ridiculous.
a bunch of years ago, and I wish I had saved this paper. It was another regression analysis. I love stats. And regressions are amazing, and it really seemed every program that works, because in my head all programs work. Sometimes they only work for one session and never again, but everything works. Everything has an effect. It was 90 seconds time under tension. Like if you go through how long it takes to do, say, a Shaco workout, it's about 90 seconds time under tension with that 70%. If you if you count how long it takes to do 3 sets of 10, it's about 30 seconds per set, 90
Yeah,
seconds total work. It just kind of sits, no matter which angle you come in from, at roughly 70%, roughly 90 seconds time under tension. How you get there, who gives a shit?
that's really interesting.
So once you realize that's the important bit, like that's the meat in the middle, we can get there from a lot of different directions. And then
Yeah,
when you see all these different coaches who have got seemingly opposing styles, once you meet in the middle and realize that both those coaches are giving all their athletes roughly 70%, roughly 90 seconds.
I think to a lot of athletic success in particular, I can think of things like complex training, which is, like lift something heavy, go run fast.
Mm-hmm.
The old Charlie Francis, Ben Johnson thing.
Yep.
It works if you're Ben Johnson, but I can name a bunch of other sprinters who it never worked for. The only other person I can think of significantly who used that style of training was GSP, and he
Mm-hmm.
was trained by a guy who was a Charlie Francis right hand man kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also Canadian, and so you go, okay, well, is it the knowledge of how to make it work? Is it that they had a 1 in a billion athlete in front of them? Is it the drugs? Is it a
Mm-hmm.
combination of all those things? Because I remember talking about that with an AFL strength and conditioning coach, Quinny, so he was the Essendon strength and conditioning coach when Essendon went undefeated for the AFL year and then came second to Brisbane the next year.
Yep.
He also happened to be Lauren Hewitt's sprint coach. For people who don't know, Lauren Hewitt was an Olympic finalist in the 200 meters, so a very fast sprinter. And I brought that up to him as a training thing, and he just goes, "Oh, yeah, it doesn't work." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What do you mean it doesn't work? Because here's a gold medal over here that says it does." He goes, "Yeah, it works if you got Ben Johnson." So I've
Mm.
tried it for years on bobsledders who are super strong and fast. I've tried it on AFL. I've tried it on sprinters, and I can't make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So that says to me that you really need to be super special to make that work. So when I
Oh
see
man,
coaches,
I gotta share a story with you about that one. Like Dylan Hellriegel from Perth, massive dude. Like I think he's like 6'5" or something. I think he was the first person to squat and deadlift over 900 pounds raw in the
oh
same
wow,
competition.
okay, so massive, yeah,
Obviously, a lot of PEDs, a lot of drugs, whatever, but it doesn't really matter. People would come up to me all the time and said, "Tell me what does Dylan Hellriegel do to get strong?" And I'd give them the same answer every single time. I said, "It's oxygen." That kid, if he just took a really deep breath, I'm sure his chest would get bigger. If he walked up a set of stairs, his quads would blow up. Like I think those really top of the tree guys like Ben Johnson or GSP or Dylan here, we're talking about genetics that are so primed for muscle growth and for strength that anything will work for them. So it doesn't surprise me that something that worked for Ben Johnson hasn't worked for anybody since.
No, no. Well, and I mean, as it just, because I am a bit of a Ben Johnson fan, it took until Usain Bolt to beat
Mm.
Ben Johnson's time. So 30 years nearly to run as fast as Ben Johnson ran in the late 80s. Like, it just shows how far ahead of the game he really was. So,
Yep.
um, and although that to me has to bring in questions about how come Bolt's able to run so fast when we said that was a drug only time and he beat people who got banned. But that's a completely separate discussion.
I think I'll comment briefly on that. From what we've seen in strength sports, it generally does take about another 3 or 4 decades. Someone does something on drugs, it'll take 20, 30 years for somebody not on drugs to do the same thing.
Well,
Um,
have you seen
I,
North Korea's weightlifting team? So North Korea pulled out of the testing pool, basically. They said they weren't going to go to 2020, right?
right.
Because of COVID and whatever. So they pulled out and they actually withdrew all their lifters from international competition, which made them ineligible to compete until 2022, right? So now they're back in. They're going to Paris, but they were untested for 5 years. At the last World Championships, they sent 11 athletes and 11 world champions came home.
Right.
So
Oh, okay,
that
right.
that's the benefit of going untested for 5 years.
Oh, jeez. That's just, yeah.
So these Olympics, like I would expect a further whitewash from the North Koreans at the Olympics this year, which will be, for them, what a success, because it's not like they've had a huge amount of Olympic success. They're a tiny little country.
Yeah, I can't remember seeing North Korea do anything before in anything.
Now, just going back to volume and intensity,
Yep.
which do you think is more likely to create problems? Like, like at what point does too much volume become problematic? At what point does too much intensity become problematic? Which is more likely to happen for more people?
Oh, intensity will have more problems sooner.
More injuries or just failure to progress? Like, what's the problem that gets
Both.
caused?
Both.
Okay.
Because I get why people like going up to those, like the 90% plus stuff. I've got a lot of friends who are still in the sport, well, multiple world champions that train that way, but they've got there over a really long period of time, and it works. Once again, it works for them, but it doesn't work for too many others. Going high into those intensities, you can get amazing results if you get it right, but you're riding a knife edge the whole time. Um, Within the session, you're riding a knife edge because it's really easy to screw up a lift at above 90%. Um, it's really easy to just injure yourself in that moment.
Yeah, I think that's
Because,
actually a good point. I was just, when you said that, I realized like in weightlifting, obviously the loads are much lower because the speed is higher.
mm,
But if I mess up a snatch, I just drop it. If you mess up a squat, you get crumpled.
yep, yep. And there's, you look at all the other extra things people do if they start playing with intensity. Let's take a deadlift, for example. All of a sudden, they switch to a mixed grip so they can deadlift slightly more. It's no longer a self-limiting movement due to grip. And then you'll see people put on massive figure eight straps on small loads and then work up through the range. And you're going, dude, there's too much of a mismatch. And so it's really, really easy to injure yourself because of the tools that you're using to try and go
Yeah.
heavier. Like knee wraps or bands or whatever. Like just all the intensity stuff just carries a much higher risk.
What about uh, when you find people saying that you need to use loads of like 85 plus percent to target the high threshold motor units, and and you're saying though that we can get a lot stronger on using much smaller loads relatively. Does that pan out, or is it just end up probably like, or do you just have to do a lot of submaximal work so you can do an 85 plus percent lift in training?
It depends on the athlete on that one. Let me think. I think we've talked about that long term athletic development model before. Like if I get an athlete that I know that's kind of worked through those stages and they spent their childhood squatting and running and skipping and they can do a cartwheel and they're 40 but they can still move athletically, like then everything is different
Yeah.
compared to the person that comes in that doesn't have a good movement library behind them.
I think I mean, one of the things I find, particularly when I work with people aerobically because they want to run a marathon or something, is, we're trying to build aerobic ability, injury resistance,
Mm-hmm.
plus speed all
Yep.
at the same time versus if you have a 40-year-old runner who comes along who ran competitively, they did cross country and then they joined an athletics club and they've run
Mm-hmm.
their entire life. Well, now we just have to work on speed because
Yeah.
you've got the other things already built in. And that's actually,
Mm-hmm.
working on one thing is so easy compared to working on 4 or 5 things.
Right. Right. The first thing that literally nowadays, I just ask somebody to do a squat. Like go to work out where we're going to start. I go, all right, you're 47. Let me see your squat. And if they, and this is how I know how much mobility or pre-work or work capacity work by how early the groan comes listening to a guy our age squat or get up out of a chair. Like if you heard those guys, you go, all right, you got to stand up now. And they go, ugh.
Yeah, the dad
You're
sounds. Yeah.
stacking yourself up now.
Well, that's actually a really good kind of entry into the next thing I wanted to ask you is, obviously, you benched over 300. There's been some stuff has happened between that and now. What's
Mm-hmm.
what's your training look like now? Because I'm pretty sure you're aiming to go back to powerlifting over the next 12 months or so, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm looking at it like it's always there. I know for me, in terms of mental health, if I don't pick up something heavy every now and then I don't deal well with the world.
Yeah.
The world is much easier to deal with if I've just squatted really heavy. People find me much more easy to deal with. I'm
Yeah.
happier. I'm friendlier. Knowing that I can't lift super heavy to get the results that I want anymore, I've spent the last few years trying to find ways to make training really enjoyable and have that challenge that would still get a strength benefit without doing traditional powerlifting.
Yeah. And I'm
I
guessing
actually
without
got
a lot of the breath holding that would be needed for maximal loads.
correct because that's the dangerous bit. So I need to make sure that and so I'll use nasal breathing as my stop and go for everything. If I can do everything while nasal breathing, it's difficult sometimes, especially with heavier weights. Then I'm in that I'm good. But
Yeah.
as soon as I have to open my mouth to do anything at all and go into a higher kind of heart rate intensity,
Yeah.
then it's no good. I have to back off.
What's that flip between sympathetic and parasympathetic, isn't it? Like
Pretty
when you
much,
have to come from your relaxed breathing into a fight or flight method of breathing, I mean, it's
yeah.
definitely that switch has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah. And so that was pretty much the way I recovered from heart failure the first time. Like I went from that 10% ejection fraction and got it back up to 69%. I got up to, and I was literally just doing maffetone work.
Yeah.
Uh,
You
I,
understand, like, it takes every ounce of adulthood in me not to go 69, dude. Give me
it's just that one of those numbers, right?
yeah.
It's got to be done.
But
Um,
so how much math work did it take to get there? Like, how many months was that?
Trying to think through took to go from 10 to let's call it 70 for the 15-year-old 45.
Children in the room.
10 to 70 took me about 2 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And now the style of training you're talking about, I mean, this is really, and I find this is quite this is something people don't understand. You can train at sub max intensities, both for endurance and strength, and actually get a
Mm.
great result. But when we're talking about it in terms of strength, it's really removing the subconscious inhibition that's there. That, like when you're going to for a limit weight, there's a lot of protective mechanisms that your body suddenly switches on. Whereas when you are in a non-threatening environment, your body like relaxes into it, for lack of a
Mhm.
better expression. And so is that the style of training you're using now? You're kind of sneaking up on it rather than forcing it on yourself?
I do a lot of isometrics now. Um, because my goals in training is I want to be able to train for the next 40 years,
Yeah.
50 years, or however long I stick around. I figure with all my problems, I'll live to well over 100 and go to everyone else's funerals. So I want to be able to be moving super well in my 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And I want to be able to run. And so
Yeah.
I think about it this way. The thing that stops guys our age and older from running is that loss of elasticity in tendons. So we know we've got a big drop off in tendon health and tendon strength. Best thing we can do for tendons is just do long isometric holds in, like I'll hold the deep squat position, like just come out. So I'm not resting in the position. I'm just holding a deep squat. Quads burning. You hit that for like
Are you, when you say
90
isometric, are you
seconds or 2 minutes,
in the position, or are you maximally tensing things in that position?
both.
Right.
It'll depend on,
That's another thing
how I
people misunderstand
depend on
with
the movement.
isometrics too, is that like because they work so well, because there's no change in joint angle, so the body can really allows you to switch on a lot of muscle. But
Yes.
you've got to learn to switch it on. You can't just pause in that position. You've actually got to try to light everything up when you're there.
Yeah. So I think for most people, where I start them with isometrics, we'll get get a strap or a rope or something for them to push into because they need that external feedback. I've been doing this for so long. I know that I can just drop myself into a lunge and push against myself. So like maybe front leg will be maximum quad, and then the back leg will be, me pulling my hip flexors through and locking my abs down super tight and holding that for I normally go 30 seconds at about 90% intensity. And then I'll just next 30 seconds, I'll ratchet up. Last 30 seconds, I am squeezing every muscle as tight as I can while trying to nasal breathe.
So you're still using that 90-second cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I find just because it is such a long contraction, that's very difficult to keep things switched on. I mean, the high threshold units aren't going to last that long.
No,
They've given out well before that. So now we're getting into slow twitch strength effectively.
pretty much. Yeah. We're talking about the strength it's lasting strength. Those high threshold fast twitch stuff, like if you needed to go do something, if you've got that really great training base where you got a lot of slow twitch strength that'll keep you keep you well. Like if you need to run up a mountain, like the shit that you do, like you would peak for that. Like you can really push that. uh, I think it's like with endurance stuff. If you maintain that really high aerobic threshold, you can push your VO2 max up very quickly for a
Mm.
short time. But without that training, you're going to maintain a high VO2 max anyway without the added stress.
Yeah. I mean, I
Same
always
rules.
tell people that the three most important things to train are static flexibility, aerobic fitness, just that base
Mhm.
like fitness, and maximal strength. Because like you said, like those the things that took the longest to build stick the best. So,
Yeah.
hopefully you'll hang on to them for as long as possible if you want to be the last man standing.
Well, that's what I found with coming back to lifting at all. After I didn't lift for probably at least 18 months after the strokes. And I'm not sure if I told you, I did a little bit of CrossFit just for shits and giggles, just because I wanted to be around other people while I was lifting. And I found that I could still maintain a 200 kilo front squat pretty easily without putting a lot of effort into it. I didn't bench for 5 years and still had a 160 bench. Strength, like proper strength, is super resilient. It takes a
Yeah.
long time to go away.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like it's one of the qualities that detrains the slowest.
Yes. Strength will detrain slowly. The skill, though, or the technical skill, will detrain very, very fast.
Yeah.
So
So
you'll be,
you mean like the groove of the lift, right?
yep, yep.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the strength component, it sticks around.
And
Sticks
so
around a long time.
you're training at the moment, because I know you've got some rugby girls that you work
Mhm.
with, and then right at the other end of the spectrum, you've got like an older trainee who's had a disability technically. And so how do you make I mean, there's obviously an overriding philosophy that fits all of those things. How do
Mhm.
you, how would you describe your basic training philosophy?
Hmm. Athlete centered.
Yep.
Yep. It's all about whoever's standing in front of me. Um,
That's interesting. I mean, the last podcast I did was with a pro triathlete who's also a coach, who I'd been his strength coach, is how I know
Mhm.
him. And his coach was this guy called Darren Smith, who's one of the like best Olympic triathlon coaches ever. So
Was he? Darren was an athlete as well, wasn't he?
probably,
Yeah.
but at the London Olympics, his girls went 1, 2, 3. So he only takes one athlete from each country. That way, there's
Mhm.
no weirdness in the squad, like as in like two athletes battling for the same spot on the same national
Right.
team.
Yep. Yep.
But to have your training, sorry, maybe it was 1, 2, and 4.
Wow.
And he's had that sort of success for a decade or more. And so Mitch, the triathlete I know, trained under him, and one of the things he said was that if he had to choose between someone doing like, I don't know, VO2 max intervals, but on the bike with, like the knees going out and the body rocking everywhere, or just do a technique session focusing on proper cadence and proper form, he'll pick the movement session every single time. And it's interesting that you're in a completely different world and you're saying, I'll pick the movement every single time.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And it's come from having the ability to play in a lot of different sports over the years, and seeing that if we take an athlete first approach, we have the same amount of joints. The joints can move through a certain range of motion. There's going to be individual differences, but they kind of do the same thing. Our bodies pretty much move the same. If we really pull back, everybody's the same. It's the same principles.
Yeah.
The bits out on the end, like whether it's a bike, a barbell, a football, or a surfboard, that doesn't really matter. Well, to me, it doesn't matter because I coach movement and strength. If you need those extra skills at the end, you need a technical coach for that.
Yeah.
But in terms of preparing the body to move well, all the principles are the same for every sport, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, and even, I mean, on my website, it says, I believe everyone's an athlete. I
Yep.
mean, an athlete might squat with 1,000 pounds, but mum and dad need to squat to go to the toilet.
Right. Yeah.
An athlete might sprint a 10-second 100. Mum or dad might need to run across the road to cross it before the tram comes. So, we all have the same needs, as you said, like it's all the same. It's
Mm.
maybe different amplitudes or different intensities, but we've all got the same needs as human athletes. So, yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. Um, where does loading come in to that? I mean, because you've said, athlete centric, movement centric. Um, you're obviously saying strength is a general quality. I think that's another thing people misunderstand. Everyone thinks I need to get stronger. I must train like a power lifter or a weightlifter because that's how to get strong. But I mean, my opinion is those lifts are only applicable if you happen to be a power lifter, right? Because then
It's
you
like,
need
yeah,
skill on the
squats.
lift. For everyone else, do you feel it matters what lifts they're using to get strong?
No. Does- Man, I like, me. I'm a maverick. I'm very counterculture with most things. I once did a meat prep using kettlebells only. I didn't want to go, and I decided not to go above 24 kilos just to prove it could be done. So I did. I didn't even do. I maybe did double front squats and snatches. And I think that was it. My squat improved. My deadlift improved.
Oh wow.
And I didn't. I just wanted to see if I could not touch a barbell to
Well,
see.
I feel like we should get Dragon Door on the phone. There's a book deal in that.
Yeah, maybe. Uh, and I put it down to the fact that I'd done enough really heavy squats that I knew how to do that, and I could just keep. Um, well, number one, I was much more explosive because I was snatching with kettlebells. I was able to maintain stress levels because I did that through that period because it was a very heavy period of work. But I still had nationals coming up, and I still wanted to PR everything. I wanted to keep things moving forward. So
I can
that
see the
kind of,
headlines now. Like, man sets national record using only double 24 kilo kettlebells. That ad copy writes itself.
yeah, yeah, it's fun. And I was doing that because I had a lot of hip problems as well at that stage, and so I didn't want to be doing lots. And I think I remember that's when we started doing all those invitationals in Australia. So nationals kind of went with this Pacific Invitational format where there was guys coming in from overseas. And I didn't want to tell the head of Powerlifting Australia that I wasn't squatting in training. So I just, yeah, I do kettlebells. Yeah, I'm squatting. He didn't ask if I was doing barbell squats or how.
Yeah,
But yeah, it really does work. It still works.
that's
So
really interesting. And I mean, again, like shows you weren't stressing out your nervous system. Your body got used to the idea that it's always going to be successful in its squats or presses or whatever, regardless of the load being used. It's a transferable skill.
yeah, totally. Who was it? Barry Sanders, one of the greatest NFL running backs, like amazing. And this dude had quads bigger than any bodybuilder running around at that time. The dude never squatted.
Well, same with Herschel Walker. I mean, Herschel Walker's incredible in terms of
Mm.
his physique. Only ever used body weight.
Yep. Yeah, there's so much you can do with body weight. It's crazy.
I think in such a high impact sport, it's probably important that a large amount of the training is deliberately like not intense, body sparing. Because
Mm,
I've read studies showing that an NFL game is the same as being in 18 head-on car crashes at the speed limit. So
yes, I
yeah,
wouldn't doubt that at all.
that's a lot of trauma to go through in a single day every weekend. So
Hmm.
training during the week probably needs to be a little low key just to get through it.
Yeah, right, right. It's
So, how do you adopt this training framework for an over 40-year-old then? Like you said, you're screening people based on their squat and the noises they make. What else is going on in a training session for guys in our age group who maybe do want to get big and strong?
yeah. My biggest bit these days is doing. I think we've spoken about this. I just do a long screening process nowadays, so that by the time somebody turns up to train, or that like they walk in and do their first session, it's so obvious what you're going to be doing for the next 6 to 12 months that
So
we're
you're
not.
doing this on the phone even before they come in?
Yeah, long time on the phone, or we'll sit on Skype for an hour and we'll go through what have you done for the last 40 years. How have you
Yeah,
been using your body? What do you like? What goes well? We do a big strengths based assessment because I hate being someone else's motivation. I don't want people to be paying me for accountability. Hold yourself accountable. You're responsible for the way you move. I'll give you feedback on the way you're moving and suggestions on what to do next, but I'm not going to hold your hand. You're a grown up. So
that's
that's
what
what
I
I'm
can
going
do. I'm not your Sherpa. I'm not
Yep.
carrying your bag. I'm
Mm,
not carrying you up the mountain. I'm the guide. Like all I can do is shine a light on the pathway.
yep.
You still got to walk it. You got to carry the load. I can give
Right.
you some tips along the way and say, "Oh yeah, I've got another guy who has the exact same job as you. This is what he found was really helpful for him when he was
Right.
struggling with that." But
Hmm.
I'm not coming in to save the day. I can't do that. You have to do that.
Yep. So that's where yeah, I'm fully with that, 100%. And so that way we spend a lot of time working out before they started training. How are you going to train? How are you going to approach this goal? And is your goal meaningful? Like, is your goal going to get you out of bed at 5:30 a.m. in the middle of winter when everything else is going bad, when you've got a rent inspection coming up, when work is smashing you? Is your goal still
Do you
important
feel
then?
a lot of people just on motivation because it's actually something that's come up frequently in the last couple of days with guys I've spoken to or are speaking to in terms of their interest in becoming clients, and guys are saying they're unmotivated, and I ask them what their goals are. Their goals are so extreme that I, as in like a guy who's done like a marathon suddenly saying, well, I want to run 260K. you know that's such a big stretch. Your body actually, your brain can't conceive that that's possible for you.
Yep.
Do you see people setting goals for themselves that are actually so big that they're actually demotivating themselves through not taking it like a stepping stone approach? They're just going like for the biggest thing they can think of.
Yeah, yes and no. Like, I think those big, audacious, almost unreachable goals are super important. But as long as you have all of the intermediate goals and short term and almost daily goals as well. I do a lot of goal setting work with people, but um, that crazy, wanting to run 260 kilometers after you've done one marathon. I'm like, cool, that's nice. But what will happen if you don't do
Hitting
it?
that and be back in
Does it,
that in 3 years.
does it matter if you never achieve it?
Mm.
And most of the time, I find people with those goals go, "Oh, it would be nice," and go, "You're never going to get there."
Yeah, it's not a goal then, is it? I mean,
No, it's
like
not.
you
It's
said, if
like
it's not getting you out of bed, you're almost angry at yourself every day that you
a,
haven't already accomplished it. It's not really the right goal.
yeah, like for me, my personal journey into powerlifting, I was still a minister and a chaplain at the time. I was a youth worker as well. I worked with a lot of high school kids for a long time, and I'd tell them, "This is what I'm going to do. This is who I'm going to be. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to every afternoon when your dad goes to the pub, I'm going to ride past the pub to the gym. And I'm going to sit in the gym for the next 2.5 hours every night this week. I'm going to do that. And it's going to look like I'm not going to get very far, but if you stick with it, you're going to get there." I made that an identity
Yeah.
that my success in powerlifting wasn't just for me, it was for my community, it was for my students, it was for my family, it was a representation of everything that I was. So every day that I wasn't doing that, that was pain. That was
Yeah.
literally a pain response. And unless your goals are at that level, you're mixing up whether you're going to make it or not. I want to get people to the point where achieving their goal isn't will I, won't I? It's inevitable. It's like, if I
Yeah.
just keep going, I'm going to get this.
Yeah. And I find, I mean, for me, the stepping stone goals, like you said, like the big goal in the end, but I need some stepping stones right now.
Yeah.
And that's ticking off, 5 things that I have to do every day that I know will create successful habits that lead me to that thing. That's fine. But every time I accomplish those 5 things or I hit my next stepping stone goal, then I get a feeling of accomplishment. I feel proud of what I've done. And then
Yeah.
it feeds on itself. I start to believe that I'm going to be successful for the next time and the next time and the next time. So it's not
Yeah.
even just that,
That's,
am I
isn't it?
going to develop the physical capability to do it? It's that when I stand on the start line for whatever, or like go to the meet or whatever the thing is, I believe I'm going to knock this out of the park. I've
Mm-hmm.
been successful so many times that actually not being successful wouldn't even be in my character now.
Right. Yeah. I I failed so very few lifts ever in training. I can remember the lifts that I failed. Um, so I knew that whatever weight I put on the bar, I was going to stand up with it. Uh, like, it was just like you said, the confidence comes from just this history of success that you say you're going to do it, you do it. I'm going to get, and even if it's, I'm going to get up tomorrow at 5:30, I'm going to put my running shoes on, and then I'm going to sit down and make myself a coffee, because that's the win. I just need to get in the
Yeah,
habit
yeah.
of putting my running shoes on. Cool, you've done that. So now you're confident that you can put your running shoes on. But you have to have done that a few times and done it on a day where you feel like shit and everything's gone wrong. And once you do that, you go, oh, okay, this is something I do. I
I
just do that.
saw a really good Jordan Peterson quote on this, and because he was asked how should people be successful about diet and exercise, and he said your first goal should be so easy you can't fail. And it's
Yes.
exactly that. He
You
said,
can, you trip over the bar.
yeah, but if your first goal is I want to be working out at 5 a.m. to achieve my goals, just get up at 5.
Yep.
Don't even work out. Just get up at 5
Right.
and stay awake. Don't go back to bed. But and then the next day it's like you said, like put your runners on. Then the next day
Oh, man.
it's gonna
I had
be like get up at 5, put your runners on, do 5 push-ups. Like make it so easy each day you cannot fail.
I remember a lady I worked with, must have been a dozen years ago now. It was when I first came to Perth. And her goal for a week was to put her workout gear, like just get her runners, her Lululemons or whatever, get that out of her wardrobe every day in the evening and just put it out for the next morning. I said, you don't even have to don't set an alarm this week, don't get up. I just want you to get your gear ready every day. By the end of the week doing that, she started getting up and training, because that was the thing that was stopping her. That was the only thing. That once we cleared that, she was good to go. But
So
just the
important.
stupidly corny goal of going, yeah, I want you to put your workout gear out on your bed for the
I,
next
I,
morning.
my rule for the mornings is I don't hit snooze. So that's
Mm-hmm.
like I have some non-negotiables in my life. So I mean I don't drink, and that's just who I am now. I don't drink. So there's nothing you can do or say that's going to coerce me into drinking. I didn't do it on my wedding day. I didn't do it on Nash's wedding day. I didn't do it on like I didn't do it on my 50th birthday. It's just not me, right?
Yeah.
But I don't hit snooze. So at the moment the alarm goes off, I get up, I get vertical because I find once you're vertical, it's pretty easy. If you stay,
Oh,
if you keep hitting snooze, it's pretty hard to get going for the day.
I took to wearing an eye mask a few years ago because, insomnia is pretty bad with brain injuries. And so first thing I do every morning, I just like lift it up like this. If I see sunlight coming in, I go, well, I must
Time.
be up.
It's
And
time.
so literally feet are got to be on the floor within the next 5 seconds. Like if I think about it, if I do something about it, it's just, all right, eye mask off, let's stand up. And then make a decision after that. But once you're standing, it's easy. The decision is never, well, I want to lie back down and go back to sleep and go, well, I'm up now. I might as well keep going.
Yeah. And so now you're up. Let's talk training. So obviously, back in the day, how many days a week would you have trained when you were competing for
Six.
powerlifting? 4, 5,
Six.
6.
Yeah.
So Monday to Saturday.
I took Saturdays off. I'd often play golf or go out with the family, go hiking, do something relaxing and restorative on Saturdays. And then I'd still train Sunday morning before church because the family slept in and I was bored and wanted
Is
something
that
to do.
because meets would be on a Sunday as well?
Uh, no, I just like training a lot.
Okay.
Yep. I just, yeah. I,
What was
I
it?
I used to, like I was telling someone the other day. I would win nationals on a Sunday and train Monday morning. Like it was just like I love training, man. I just wanted to be training all the time. So
And what was a general week like? How many squat sessions, how many deadlift sessions, how many bench sessions for 6 days a week?
I'd squat every day, some kind of squat, and I'd bench every day.
Well,
Bench,
obviously, like this in terms of how hard you're working each day.
benching, I was always hitting about 5 sets of 3 at 80%, and so it'd give me that average intensity of around 72% going that way. Squatting, I would squat up to a max every single day.
Oh wow!
Just
How
that
Bulgarian of you?
Bulgarian method, yeah. I love squatting, man.
Yeah.
That's what I miss most. I can't get a bar on my back anymore, so I have to been front squatting for years now. But
Oh, is that because of the shoulder surgery?
yep, yep. So just can't get it on my shoulders anymore. And
And
I
deadlift
love
like once a
squatting,
week?
so I just sorry, and
Deadlift once
deadlift
a week?
once a month,
Okay. Just because
maybe.
it's so taxing?
Uh, I found I was always trying to remove things from training that I didn't need to do, and so one time I decided to not deadlift between comps because deadlifting at a really high body weight, especially for a natural guy, your gut gets really big. Getting into deadlift position kind of sucks and felt bad. So I didn't want to deadlift so often. So I didn't. I did good mornings and squats, and it didn't make a difference to my deadlift going up or down.
I have this another friend, Kyle, who you know as well, and
Mm-hmm.
we basically have this shared opinion that if you can squat it, you can probably pull it for most people.
Yep.
And so, like provided you keep leg strength and you're doing some other grippy, backy stuff, your deadlift's probably not maybe 5 kilo or 10 kilo, but it's not going to change a tremendous amount for most people.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's accurate. I just the way I bench as well, and I used to put a lot of it would really tax my back. When I bring someone on for the first time, no matter how long they've been benching, and most of the people I coach for benching are already national champions, whatever. I'll always get a phone call the next day complaining about back soreness.
Yeah,
I go,
just
man,
because
my
the amount
back.
of tension you're getting them to create.
Yeah, just like working on these few little things of locking everything just a little bit, locking it down a little bit more, like learning how to ratchet things in further. And then guys that have got massive benches that have won nationals before will go, fuck, my back hurts. This is crazy. I'm going, yeah, like you've gone up a level now. You'll start noticing some big gains after that.
And
So
what's
because there's so much back involvement, I didn't want to deadlift afterwards.
yeah, and what's the change now? So obviously, um, sounds like your relative intensity has come down. How many days a week do you train now?
Still train daily.
Okay, still
So
six.
yeah, 6 or 7. Like I like to do something every day. And because it's such low intensity, I can really easily. And then every now and then somebody will want to train or meet up at the gym to do something. And so that week I'll probably only train 6 times because the next day will end up being a rest day because I've gone hard and heavy
Yeah.
because I'm in a position that I can. So I just
Does
always
that
want to be in that position that I could go heavy if I wanted to, but I don't
has,
want to.
has that because you said you used to be able to do nationals and then train the next day. As you've gotten older, so if you've meeting someone for like a challenge bro off kind of workout, and now you're saying you'll probably take the next day off. So what I'm hearing from that is you're still good to go on any day, but
Yep,
it's got a higher price now.
it does. Yeah, it really does. Um, Especially like when you combine heart failure and getting a little bit older, recovery is the
Well, and you've got testosterone problems and thyroid problems and bloody hell. I mean,
right.
we've covered apparently.
It's just like it's one of those universal principles that doesn't change. That recovery, whatever you can recover from, is okay. That's
Yeah,
the range. Um, I just try and give myself less to recover from. Rather, what is that minimum effective dose rather than maximum
yeah.
recoverable?
Well, I mean, I've been playing around with this idea. I haven't figured it out fully yet. I mean, I've got the big blocks. There's three things, right? Like we need some flexibility, mobility stuff because
Mm-hmm.
that movement quality has to be maintained. I need some strength stuff and I need some fitness stuff. And those are the big three, right?
Yep.
And so if they're that important and we say that important things we do daily, how do I put that into a workout that I can do every day? And that's the
Mm-hmm.
bit I haven't figured out is the ratio of things or how much time or because ideal world you just do an hour of each every day. And so now
Right.
I've got 21 hours of exercise a week and that's probably not very realistic for many people. So I'm trying to figure out how that should look. but not in just a. I don't want to diss the program because the overall idea is not bad. The easy strength style of training, the overall idea is good, is to maintain a moderate intensity and
Right.
train more often than not. I think the volume is probably on the low side for most people. I think, like you said, if someone was a high responder for strength or muscle, it would be adequate. But for someone like me, 2 sets of 5 for something done 5 days a week is not adequate.
Yeah, probably
Um,
not going to do much.
yeah. So I would definitely need more volume than that, and also probably
Mhm.
because I am more slow twitch gifted than I am fast twitch gifted. So again, higher volume would be a better training idea for me. But trying to figure out how to put that together, um, but it ends up being a lot. So like, how long are you spending at the gym now when you're trying to do stuff? Is there cardio in there? Because I know, I mean, you spoke before about the nasal breathing, MAF stuff to regain heart function. How have you
Mhm.
blended it all together to make it work with what your journey's been so far?
So this is really funny. Have you seen the Metamorphosis program, Joel Jamison's one?
I know what it is. I haven't followed it though.
So when I went and did some work with him in 2014 and wrote up what based on what he taught over the week, what I thought should be a good training session for pretty much anybody, whether they're high level, general pop, whatever.
Yeah,
And it looked pretty close to what Metamorphosis looks like. I think
yeah,
anybody at the seminar probably would have come up with the same thing. When I started doing cardiac rehab after the heart failure, cardiac rehab looks like Metamorphosis. And so at that point, I've gone, oh, okay, so it's all the same. Like really smart people will come up with the same basic structure. We just push it a little bit harder with an elite athlete versus a 60-year-old man in heart failure. It's still 20 minutes of cardio as the minimum effective dose. It's still
yeah,
20 minutes of being able to go at either a MAF heart rate if you're measuring it or nasal breathing the whole time. The the weights workout afterwards is literally, and this cracked me up, was push, pull, hinge, and squat.
yeah,
Pick whatever you want. Make sure that you're hitting at least 20 to 25 reps. I'm
yeah.
like, oh, is that it? And so
Like
that's where I come up with
per movement pattern or per workout?
per movement.
Yeah, right. So you're probably
So,
talking like more like 4 sets of 5 rather than 2 sets of 5 from the normal sort of easy strength ideas.
I'd go like two sets of 25.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A lot of the time we just use machines to cut down on all the other
The
issues with
faffing
doing harder
around.
reps.
Yeah,
So, like, you imagine like a chest press machine, you're locked into a plane of moment, and you're just punching out like 30 reps. Lots of large muscles pumping, your nasal breathing, obviously heart function. You're getting your aerobic capacity up
mm,
through weights as well as the cardio. So that's what I do most days. It's all done in 45 minutes,
yeah. And 6 or 7 days a week.
6 or 7 days a week. If I decide that I'm going away for the weekend on Friday, I will just up the weights, drop the reps a little bit, hammer myself because I still enjoy being sore for some reason. Like I think I lived in muscle soreness for
Yeah.
a good 20
Well,
years. That
that's the disease, right? That we believe this is a good thing for us.
so I'll just go a little bit harder. Like I know I worked out pretty hard the other day. I've got bicep DOMs, a little bit of bicep DOMs today because we just decided let's go hard.
Yep.
But in terms of going hard, still nasal breathing, still having to go perfect form, full range of motion.
Yep. Yep. And how are you going to change that if you do go back to competitive powerlifting? Are you going to stick with the same
Mm.
format or are you going to go back to more like what you used to do before?
I think I'll stick with pretty similar to what I've got, except I will go above 90% every now and then.
Yep.
But it's almost like I'll just sneak above very quickly and then come back, almost like a ninja.
Will
Just
you
up
try to
there.
offset that with more sets at lower intensity so that that average still comes out at 70%?
Yeah, yep.
Because that's,
Who
I mean, when I see
working
people
with
go,
Matt?
oh, I did a set at 90%. I'm like, okay, if you did, let's say, what, 3 or 2 threes at 90%, that's going to be a really hard session. Let's say
I'd,
2 twos. That's going to be better.
I'd probably go three singles above.
So you've done 3 reps above 90%. We'll say that's 270, right? Because it's 3 by 90.
Mm-hmm.
So now I need to figure out how to get roughly the same number from lower intensity. So I need 5 by 5 at 70 something like that, because 5/7 is going to give me, like 350 by the same sort of math that I'm using. So,
If I go to 90%, I drop down to about 50.
yeah, and as in back off sets afterwards. So
Mm,
work up to the singles and then do a bunch of back off sets.
yep.
Yeah,
Where you get into that speed strength range, like 55%, maybe up to 65%, depending how good I am at that movement.
yeah,
And we're just going for really fast, really, really clean reps that are easy. So if we're using RPEs, they'll be at 7.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, and I see so many people go, "Oh yeah, well I worked up to 90%." Yeah, but you didn't really do many reps on your way up, and so really the entire workout was at 90%, and you're wondering why you're blown to pieces. You actually need to calm the body down again afterwards and
and
hit
that's
those.
and that's where people get the volume piece wrong when they're going high intensity. They front load all that volume. Because really, getting up to 90%, you want to do as few reps
Yeah,
as possible. So by the time you get to 90%, you go, it is proper 90%,
yeah,
and then do all the volume afterwards.
yeah.
What I mostly do
Don't
is,
do the 5x5s before.
oh man, I see that all the time. People like doing 10s and 5s and 8s and whatever on the way up. I go, man, just stop,
Well,
just
that's
stop.
actually what I used to do with my mum when she was competing. So, we would never go near her competition lift prior to about a month out.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, and because she's tiny and she's old, there's not too much. They're not super big lifts, and her margin in terms of how many reps she has in a training session are quite small. Like she doesn't have like 50 reps up her sleeve in a training session. So if we worked up to 2 sets of 5 at 70 to 75 kilo, I knew that she could lift over 85 in competition. And so we work up like quickly doing ones and twos, getting up to 70, 75, hit our fives, and then go back and do a bunch of sets at 55 to 60 kilo. And we get
Mm-hmm.
multiple sets of 5 down there. And so it's exactly what you said. So when she was hitting the heavy sets, she was fresh. And then we'd work down to the higher volume stuff.
Yeah, I think that when we go with all the back offsets, I think this is what I see a fair bit. Um, where people aren't getting the results from, they tend to get a little bit mindless with those back offsets. I think in my head, the idea of those back offsets when I go to 55% is I can really ratchet up how much I'm concentrating on one aspect of the movement.
Yeah.
And so
So still
mentally,
technical perfection.
yeah, so that mental, the mindset stuff, you're still going at over 100% there. But you're not going heavy, but sort of the way you focus has always got to be right up there. Most people train for completion. They go, well, I've done the 90% work. Now I just need to tick off that I've done all
Yeah.
the other work and I'll get strong. I go, no, it doesn't work like that.
Well, there's no, I mean, I think that's an excellent mindset, is in like a mindset of excellence, is
Mm,
that there's no such thing as good enough, is that everything I'm going to do has to be as good as possible, even if it's just assistance work.
yep. I remember somebody telling me about like scapular retraction. They go, I've retracted as far as I can. I said, oh, so the bones are touching now? And they go, that's ridiculous. And I go, let's make it ridiculous. Like you can go further.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always. Like
Uh,
there's always a little bit more. And that's why for some people they hear that and they go, oh, that's a terrible negative way to live life. I think it's beautiful. I love it.
hmm.
I love knowing that there's always more, that I'm going to discover something else.
Well, I
And
think that's important.
no matter how good I think I am at something, that I can do something one day and go, oh, holy shit, that's something new. I've never seen that before.
If you're going to devote your life to something, this is an Ido Portal thing, which I've stolen since because I like it so much, is that if you're going to devote your life to something, it has to be something that is a endless depth of knowledge.
Oh
So,
yeah, right.
and that's like, so movement for him is a non-stop topic, because while we might talk gymnastics skill today, maybe it's martial arts tomorrow and it's dance the next day,
Mhm.
maybe it's juggling the day after and parkour, and you see like all of those things have a massive array of skills and technique to learn. But even with strength, I mean, something as simple as powerlifting is only 3 things. I've spoken to a guy who was a very high level running coach, and he said his intent on every step, and so think about this for a distance runner, every step needs to be better than the step before it. Right. So he's out there every single step constantly seeking perfection. And again, that's another thing I've stolen because I think that's so good. And people ask me, like, how come you never run or ride with music? I have so much to concentrate on. I couldn't possibly distract myself with,
Oh my God.
you know,
Yes.
so I'm thinking
100%.
about like
Yeah.
posture and shoulders, and is my neck relaxed, and what are my hands doing, and how are my feet hitting the ground, and how's my breathing. There's so much to think
Yeah.
about.
Why would you want to be distracted at a time like that?
Yeah,
Uh,
and so that idea of seeking perfection and always trying to increase knowledge, I think, is such a powerful thing, because if you are going to devote your life to strength and fitness, like we are, then it has to be a subject that you can always be excited about.
I yeah, I love that not listening to music one. People ask me for you because I train by myself at home, set up a garage gym just so I could deal with people less. As people make me grumpy in gyms, you know the feeling. And so people go, well, what do you listen to? And I go, I don't. I listen to the sound of my breathing. I listen to the 7 voices that are running through my head at any given time. But I want to be able to concentrate fully on what I'm doing. I don't need the music to distract me. I quite like not having the music.
Do you know, this is going into the weeds now? Do you know about the Mozart effect?
No, what's that one?
So there are studies that show that listening to light classical, so not like the 1812 overture with cannons and Beethoven's
Mm.
Fifth, but light classical music, so like Mozart's Water Music is usually the example used, that cognition goes up, right? And when you look at performance of tasks, having something repetitive, like Einstein, for instance, stamping patents while coming up with the theory of
Oh,
relativity.
yep, yep.
So
I've seen all
having
that.
something repetitive and calming in the background actually is a performance booster. Everyone thinks it's about ACDC and blasting it out, but you can actually gain performance by calming down the environment around you too. So I've tried it with Hare Krishna and Buddhist chants. Used to drive customers at my gym crazy because I would never play music at my gym, and then when finally they would bug me enough that I'd relent, I'd put on Buddhist chants. And it was very interesting watching the change for, like, some people suddenly boom better.
Yep.
Other people much, much worse, because they
Mm.
really needed the distraction to take them out of the moment. And that's a whole separate discussion then about internal and external motivation and our reasons for getting out of bed every day. But
Yeah, maybe some other time that one.
Hare Krishna chants, like, it's going to sound crazy, are fantastic to train to. I'll send you the actual track that I use. It's a thing I bought on iTunes. It's fantastic.
For study or for creative work that I do, if I'm working on the computer, I'll have like if I'm producing new creative work, I have Fleetwood Mac Rumors on a loop, and I can listen to that same album five or six times through while I'm working. I'm not really paying attention, but it's creative enough, and but not and because it's not new, it's not stimulating me to pay attention to it. I find that works really well. Studying, I use lo-fi beats because I've seen those
Yeah,
same studies for the Mozart effect. Um, and then, but training wise, yeah, I still go 0 for training just because I didn't have speakers, and so I'm used to it now.
yeah, yeah.
And
If you ever
sometimes I like
if you're going to
like
drive people crazy, put the Buddhist chants on.
I'll give it a go because I like that. What I loved about running and cycling is listening to the music of your chain or the music
Mm.
of your feet as you go along, and just finding that rhythm and that would get me going better than any music.
Yeah, I agree. And I always felt it was, because I grew up doing martial arts, and there's whether it's taught or not, there's breath work in martial arts if you want to hit
Hmm.
someone properly. And when I got into endurance sport more, I just found so much comfort and strength in just being focused on my breathing.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
can, I mean, it sounds so obvious. It's such a powerful thing, obviously, if you can breathe. So you can obviously keep working much, much harder.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I love the breath stuff. Like that's what I'm doing. That's what I meant about the music is like syncing your breath rate to the cadence of your feet or the bike cadence or just something like that. There's a lot of research about flow state access, which is my big thing. That's what I mostly coach. Is that's one of those really quick flow triggers, and watch it. I find watching really great marathon runners or great ultra runners. It's beautiful to watch those flow things. You look at the face and you can see that they're dialed in on something, but it's not something that we can pick in the environment.
Maximum efficiency and relaxation, I think. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Nathan, it's been awesome chat, man. I want to thank you very much. I think we've covered a surprising amount of ground, actually, considering you're just an old meathead. So really awesome chat. I want to thank you again.
You're welcome, man. It's always good talking about this stuff, and I think we should do this a bit more often. I always enjoy talking to you, Andrew.
All right. Thank you very much.
Right, take care.
Hey, just hang on one second.